Okay. I'd like to say hello to my video audience, wherever you happen to be situated. Today I'm going to be continuing on my saga of my life from those incredible events of January 1972 up until my return from my first trip to India on pilgrimage to Meher Baba's places, which happened in 74 into 75. So I'm going to be telling the story of basically a little over 3 years of my life. In 1972, after I came home from those incredible 2 experiences, it wasn't incredible 3 weeks, it was incredible 2 experiences. It took me time, as I mentioned in the tape, to balance to some degree my Ira Shader personality from this life and my Native American life in my most recent life. That one was still predominant when I came home, and was so for a few weeks into my return to my parents' home in Forest Hills, Queens, New York City. However, after a while, it faded somewhat, the personality, the persona faded somewhat, and my Ira Shader persona reasserted itself and became more the predominant. But it's definitely been a trade-off, on and off, for decades and decades. I mean, I'm not ancient, but you know, that's a long time ago. I'll be 67 on May 6th, so I've been around a while. And these were events, you know, when I was barely 20. Then anyway, I had mentioned I had graduated college. I had no clear plans. That was a big part of my problem, because I never wanted to graduate Queens College, which I had mentioned, and so I didn't really figure out what I was going to do. I was a pre-med student, and without getting into all the detail, I was very much turned off to the idea of applying for medical school, because I had a very crazy pre-med advisor who said really insane things to me. I'll tell you quickly. He said, my junior year, when I was about to apply for a medical school, and my grades were excellent. I mean, they weren't the best, but I could have gotten to almost any American med school, and that's not, and it wasn't easy. I could have gotten to Harvard Med School, probably. I can't guarantee it, but I could have gotten to the best. There was no problem with my grades, my performance as a student and as a potential doctor. But Dr. Marion, I'll use his actual name, I'm sure he's dead now, he called me in to prepare me for my interviews with the med schools, and he said, when they call you up to ask you why you want to be a doctor, don't even think of saying because you want to help people. They will laugh you out of the office. I swear to God, that's what he said. They will laugh you out of the office if you say that. Everyone knows, this is the early 70s, everyone knows that people want to be doctors because they want trophy wives, they want to have sex with a lot of women, and they want to be extremely wealthy. I was shocked. I mean, I knew there were some of my fellow students who wanted just that. It was obvious. They talked about it. But there were also a core of us who wanted to be doctors because we wanted to help people. I mean, as crazy as that sounded to Dr. Marion, I hate him for being such an asshole. I should have sued him for educational abuse. But anyway, it really freaked me out because I was very idealistic. I still am. And I couldn't understand, why would I want to be a doctor if it wasn't to help people? I couldn't figure out. I didn't care about a trophy wife and being wealthy. It never mattered to me. Anyway, that freaked me out. A few other things freaked me out. So I dropped out of the pre-med program in Queens College, and I went into the honors program, which was interesting, very interesting. I had just started right when I was there. In fact, interesting enough, very fascinating, my advisor in the honors department to help me choose a major turned out to be a woman I had met here 6 months earlier at the Meher Baba Center. She was there for the first time visiting with a friend of hers, and I struck up a minor friendship with her, enough to recognize her, for her to recognize me. And so I already had a connection with her. So when I went into major in my it was honors department and also an individual BA to have. You could have your own bachelor's degree. So she said, what do you want? What are you studying? I said, well, I'm studying some science, some philosophy, some anthropology, some art history. pretty much the whole gamut. She said, well, what, okay, great. She said, you're studying Mayor Barber's consciousness, I see. What do you want to call it? She said, well, I'd like to call it consciousness and identity. She said, fine, you got it. So I'm the only one who ever graduated from the New York City school, college system with a BA in consciousness and identity. However, it was great. I mean, I had a class in hippies and beyond. I had a class in alternative systems of higher education. I had all kinds of fascinating. I had a course with an anthropology professor in ethnobotany, where we understood and discovered how plants are used in different cultures. It was fabulous. It was almost like I was able to recreate the kind of education I wish I had at Bard or Goddard or Antioch or Reed or one of those very innovative personal schools, which I still wish I'd gone to. But anyway, I was able to create somehow, with Bob's help, what I wanted. And I knew that there was a master's program in consciousness over, and one of the schools in Santa Barbara, I think it was. And I thought, well, that's great. I have a bachelor's in conscious identity. I should go for a master's in consciousness. But somehow I never did it. And I got kind of mixed up about what I was going to do. And I wound up desperately enrolling in a program in urban design and urban affairs at the same Queens College I didn't want to be in. But I felt so panicked that I quickly applied for the urban affairs program. I got accepted, and I started out in the fall as a student, a master's student in urban affairs. I could have been a city planner. It was a good program. But then I realized right away in the first week, this is not what I want, so I dropped out of that program right away. So then I was stuck. What do I want? Well, I wanted to be a farmer, an organic farmer. And I also wanted some educational things, but I was floundering. And anyway, it was very mixed up, my life at that point. I didn't know how to proceed to my next step of my life. So I was basically floundering for a couple of years. And then I had met the wonderful man who just left us, Jack Small. I met him at the Mayor Barber House. I believe it was 1969, 70. He had come in association with Adi's journey to America to report on the events of what happened with Mayor Barber's life and death. And I met him at Mayor Barber House in the village. And he said to me after the meeting, he said, listen, have you been to India? I said, not yet. I said I had a ticket to see Mayor Barber, but he passed on, and then I haven't been. I didn't get to go to the last darshan because my parents interfered. He said, well, the Mondley are mostly still alive. If I had the chance of being with Cedar or the equivalent, he said Mahara's equivalent of Cedar and who is Krishna's wife. Krishna was Sita, and then Ram's wife was, whatever, the different consorts of the avatars. And I would get over there. He said, Baba's sister Mani is still very young and vital, and Adi's still going, and Eraj. You need to meet these people. These are God's people. And I knew he was right. I knew he was talking from a true place, but I felt I wanted to go to India when I felt a direct call from the master. I don't know why I felt that way. It was an intuitive feeling. I wanted to feel a personal invitation internally. People were going more and more in 1971, 72. In 1973, the rates to go to India were at lowest point. You could get a round-trip ticket to India for, I believe, it was about $450 in 1973. For some reason, they were a really low time, inexpensive time to get a round-trip ticket to India. And certainly I felt like grabbing the opportunity. But I felt, no, I want to wait until I feel a direct call. When that happened, at the end of the summer of 1974, I felt Baba calling me to India. It was unmistakable. He said, come, now's your time to come. So I didn't hesitate. I was waiting for that call. I had a cousin on my father's side who happened to have a travel agency business right on Queens Boulevard. At the time, he owned a travel agency. So I went over to see my cousin, Jordan. I said, Jordan, I want a round trip ticket to India. So he got me one. And I traveled to India in early October of 1974. And when I got to India and the plane landed and I disembarked, I felt I was in another planet, on another planet. The sense of the antiquity of the place I had landed, and at that time it was nothing like it is now, is still very primitive. The airport was very primitive, as people know who've been there earlier, and at a similar time, to travel to India in the early 70s, even the late 70s, was vastly different from what it is today. It was a country of incredibly less population, and even though it was very, very populous, it still was nothing compared to what it is now. And I felt, wasn't so much I felt at home, although there were elements of that, but I just felt I was on a different planet. I knew cognitively it was part of the Earth, but I felt it was so vibrationally different in such profound ways I couldn't even begin to unpack it. And so I went as quickly as I could to get I took a train, I think it was, I took a train to Pune. On the way, I encountered some beggars, not just beggars, some lepers. I saw some lepers begging. In fact, there's one with fingers rotted off, which is just pleading with me. And I know Baba had advised not to give that, but I felt it was appropriate. I threw him a few rupees. I felt he was pleading from God. And then I was struck by because my first time traveling in a third world country, so-called third world, there's so much abject poverty, so much human suffering, in ways that we don't overtly see in the West. At least not unless you look for it, like in Appalachia. At the time, there were things like that happening, but I was not aware of it visually, directly. So anyway, there I was I was in Pune. I was at a bus station, waiting to get a bus to Ahmednagar, which is about 70-mile trip by bus or car, or same, from Pune. Well, first I went to visit Hazrat Babajan's tomb, and that was wonderful. I paid my respects to Hazrat Babajan, and I spent time with Meher Baba's brother, Jal, and I spent the night at the Green Hotel. Oh, that was quite lovely. And in fact, I should mention here that Jal gave me a unique and wonderful treasure. He gave me a leather Indian briefcase that he was assigned. Meher Baba had given it to him and told him to travel all over India during the New Life and gather up many rupees as were donated from Meher Baba's New Life work. New Life work. And when Jal brought it back after a couple of months, I think it was, Meher Baba took it and put it on Meher Baba's own knees and held it there for over an hour, which Jal told me was very, very, very unusual. Meher Baba rarely held objects on his person for any significant length of time. Extremely unusual to hold a briefcase on his own person for over an hour. And he gave me that briefcase. I have it. In fact, I'll bring it with me next time. I should have brought it today so I can show it to people. It's nothing unusual. It's just a leather briefcase. Subsequently, it's almost fallen apart. And when I was in, what's the place in Maryland, Harbor de Grace, I found a lovely, very talented woman, leather worker, and I commissioned her to repair it for a couple $100. She tried to keep as much of the original leather on it, but made it like new. So now it'll last for, I can't say another 700 years, but it'll last for a while longer. And then it'll have to be redone again. Leather is not the most durable of substances. But I have that, and I feel it's a great blessing. I don't have a Sadra of Meir Baba. He said if I came back, Jal told me he would give me a Sadra, but I never came back. Why, I don't know, but anyway. I do have Meir Baba's unique New Life briefcase. No one else in the world has it. I have it. And I feel it's my greatest treasure. Anyway, then I was at the bus station the next day, and I was feeling bummed out because I'd seen already so much dispiriting things, pockets of such suffering and people living in corrugated cardboard houses and construction drain pipes. I mean, if there was a drain pipe that was of certain diameter that could accommodate human beings, whole families would move into drain pipes and stay there until they kicked out. And I was stunned. I mean, people had told me about that. That's what I see. I knew about it cognitively, but emotionally I was stunned. And I was feeling, what is this? Meir Baba's the avatar, and India is so damn terrible condition. This is 5 years after Meir Baba's demise, and there's no signs of real redemption. I mean, I don't know. I was getting bummed out. I wasn't losing faith in Meir Baba, but I was depressed. And then in the bus station, there was a sadhu. It's very clear he was a traveling sadhu. And he immediately picked up on my mental state. I knew he did. And he pointed up. Just like that. He did this beautiful mudra. And I felt telepathically he was communicating to me, do not judge. It is his. The whole cosmos belongs to him, to God. Do not judge it. And that really, just what I needed to get a little bit calmed out by what I was just cascading down, what I was going through emotionally. So then the bus trip took me to Meir Baba's place in Amanaga, the trust office, and I registered, and I went to stay at the Dalit Lodge. And I was eager to go to Meir Baba's Samadhi, his tomb, shrine. Because I've been told by many people that and Baba himself said that's the center of his presence on earth for the next millenniums. Because, that is where he said his body would be, and it was. And he said next to meeting him in physical form, that was the most significant thing that one could do in one's lifetime spiritually. There was a place of great sanskaric cleansing. And of course I felt I wanted that too. Who the hell doesn't want sanskaric cleansing? I mean, I don't know, maybe there's some people who don't care about that, but I did. And so I wanted, even though I was suffering from significant jet lag, I rented a bicycle. Oh, no, I think I did go on a bicycle. That was the next day. I went over with one of those rickshaws to Baba's Samadhi, and I went up there quickly, and I went into Samadhi without any particular sense of what I was going to experience, but as you know, those who've seen my previous tape, I've had some incredible experiences at the Meir Baba Center, absolutely mind-blowing experiences. And I was told by Jack Small and just about everyone that whatever you experience at the Meir Baba Center, you're going to experience at least 10 times as much at the Samadhi. So I was prepared, had my mind blown. I didn't know what, but at least I thought Bob would, say, "Oh, son, I've been waiting for you," or tap me on the shoulders, or embrace, or feel his embrace, or his love. Anyway, as soon as I went into this tomb and bowed prostrate to his to where he's buried, I heard an inner voice as clear as a bell saying to me, "What are you doing here?" Now, that was just about the last thing I ever expected Bob would say to me as a first greeting. What are you doing here? It wasn't like he didn't want me to be there. No, it wasn't like a nasty, "What are you doing here?" But it was strange. And then he quickly followed it by, "I am not buried in this tomb. You will never find me here. I am not buried here. I do not dwell here. I am buried in your heart and the hearts of all humanity and all beings. That is the only place you will ever recover me. I am not in this tomb. I am not in this tomb. I am not buried here. Okay, well, I was at that point 23. And I felt, at the time, I didn't get it. I felt this was it. I said, well, okay, maybe this is jet lag. I really said that to myself. I'll come back tomorrow and I'll get a proper reading from Meher Baba. Not this strange spiritual conundrum. This was the last thing I wanted, was another spiritual challenge. Not that I didn't understand that what he was saying was valid, but I didn't want it. I absolutely did not want to hear that, because I wanted to hear something comforting. Not like you have to dig God out of your heart and the hearts of others. I've been doing that. And that's a damn lot of work for any of you who are engaged in that process. It ain't easy. It's a work of many, many lifetimes. Not the work of just one life. I wanted to hear something like he loved me, and he said there was nothing like that. Now, it wasn't like I didn't feel a presence. I did. But nothing, I didn't feel any powerful waves of love or anything like that. I just had this very clear voice. I'm not buried here. So I left after a while. And see, I also met that day. In fact, I think I met the day, you see, before I went up, I met Muhammad the Must. And I was interested in I know what Meher Baba has said about Muhammad, that he's a fifth plane Must, which is a very high saint. He can either be a fifth plane or a sixth plane, and that's basically it, although you could also be between the sixth and the seventh plane. But basically, there's not too far to go once you hit the mental world. You have basically two stations, and either one is quite glorious. Interesting enough, Meher Baba said that the mental world is a spiritual nightmare. I'm not sure. Interesting, I don't know what it all means. And he said that the subtle planes are a spiritual hallucination. So that's the interesting way Baba described the different stages of the inner path. So anyway, without getting into the whole description of what a must is, it's basically, these are people that Baba did a great deal of work with. They're God-intoxicated souls who become entranced with the sights and sounds and smells of the inner realms, such that they're like drunken people, and they can't really get stuck at certain stages of the inner path, and they can't really make progress. And Meher Baba spent a great deal of time, mostly during the 1940s, but sometimes before and sometimes after, crisscrossing on foot, or by car, by bullock, all over India and Pakistan, which was one country at that time under the British, contacting thousands of these people. And there's a wonderful, unique book written by a disciple of his called The Wayfarers, which has pictures and descriptions, and very, very, very worthwhile. In fact, when the Wayfarers first came out, the Library of Congress had to establish a new category. It was the only book that's ever been published in the English language about musts, and so there's a new category made just to accommodate the Wayfarers. And I think there may be a couple others now, but there's still not much out there about the Wayfarers, about the musts. I felt, well, let me see if I can, I knew I was very intuitive. Let me see if I can get an intuition about Muhammad's spiritual greatness. I believed it was true, but I wanted to know if I could feel anything. I didn't tell anyone that was my intention. But as soon as I was introduced to Muhammad the Must, he said, "Why does he look at me like that? He will not understand me. He cannot follow me." And there I am, like, still trying to probe somewhat him psychically. And then he says again, "Why does he look at me like that? He will not follow me. He cannot understand me." And then again, each time getting more and more heated. After a while, he was very agitated. He was jumping up and down like a hop toad, literally jumping up and down. "Why does he look at me like that? He will never follow me. He will not understand me." Now this was, I don't think it was said in English. It was translated by Sidhu to me. Sidhu was there and telling me what Muhammad was saying. He was saying, why does he look at me like that? So I'm a little slow sometimes. But after about 10 minutes, I realized this was not working. I didn't have the foggiest idea where this guy was at. I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't register anything. He was way beyond my capacity to probe. But he knew everything was in my mind. I knew that. He absolutely was reading my mind totally. So I said, this is ridiculous. So I said to myself, let me stop what I'm doing. It's just angering Muhammad the Must. It's upsetting him. The moment I stopped doing it, he calmed out totally. The moment. I decided from then on to treat him like a friend. A lot of people were very much awestruck by Muhammad the Must. Some people were afraid of him. Some people adulated and worshipped him. I don't think he cared for any of that, particularly my impression. But I hit on the right thing, to treat him just like a friend. Because I realized I couldn't get any direct sense of where he was spiritually. But I knew he was a great soul. But he was also a human being. I was going to treat him like a friend. And he seemed to like that very much. From that point on, I just treated him like I would treat anyone. Mayor Baba said, it's in the discourses, that a spiritual aspirant should have unimpaired friendliness. Well, of course, that's a tall order. Toward everyone. That's a tall order, to have unimpaired friendliness. I was talking it over a few years ago with Kendrick Crossan, and she's very funny. She said, well, at best, I have impaired friendliness. Which is true of most of us. But that's the ideal, to have unimpaired friendliness to everyone. So I was doing my bit to have unimpaired friendliness to Muhammad the Must. Now, he wasn't a hard person to be friends with, but he was unusual, very, very unusual. So then I went home. I went to Dalit Lodge, feeling very sorry for myself, because Mayor Baba had not chastised me, but I don't know, I wasn't getting the kind of, I don't know what I felt, just kind of welcoming that many people described when they came into Mayor Baba's arms physically, or when they even came to the tomb and they were crying their eyes out for days, feeling at home in a way they had never felt before with their spouse, with their lovers, with their parents, with their best friends. Well, I wasn't getting that. I was getting, so I was just lying in bed in the morning, feeling sorry for myself. In those days, I might as well have majored in college in feeling sorry for myself. I was very gifted at that. And so then someone comes in and says, Muhammad the Must is asking for you. I thought, my God, does it never stop? They teased me mercilessly in grade school, in junior high school, and now they're teasing me at Mayor Baba's place. Second person comes in and says, Muhammad the Must is asking for you. I said, oh my God, they're making fun of me again. Third person came in. I thought, my God, it's getting worse. Finally, by the eighth person, I realized, this is not teasing. Something's up. I got interested. I got myself out of my lethargy. And I said to the seventh or eighth person, what do you mean he's asking for me? By name? No. He's saying the guy with the red hair and red beard. I was the only one there by that description, man or woman. I think it might have been one bearded woman, I'm just kidding. But she didn't have red beard. No, there was no one like me there at that point. So it was clearly me. He was asking for me. Well, I knew that was quite unusual. Muhammad the Must generally didn't take any interest ostensibly, noticeably, in anyone. I mean, you came in his presence, you went away, you'd say, child, get out of here, whatever it was, and he'd say, he often would say, you're mad. He'd say, everyone is mad. I mean, he wasn't the most touchy-feely, fuzzy kind of guy to be around. He could be quite abrasive at times. And if he was asking for me, I knew that was very important. So I became a new man. At hearing that Muhammad the Must was asking for me, I sprung out of my depression. I immediately rented a bicycle, but Muhammad the Must had told me, next time I come to visit him, bring him a gift. And I remembered that because it was just the night before. So I went to the bakery and I bought 3 rolls, just coarse kind of hard Indian rolls with thick, large granulated sugar on them, 3 of them. And they wrapped up in a very basic brown paper with a string wrapped around it. And I rode that over to Muhammad, absolutely thrilled to be bringing a gift to this great saint. And I get to Muhammad where he was, and I hand it to him, and he takes it like a little child. His movements were very like a child, very, very abrupt. And he took the string off, and he looked at it, and he thought, "Chuck," he was quite pleased. And he says to me, "There are 4 of them." Well, my eyes saw 3. I said, "Muhammad, that's all very well and good, but just between you and I, you can see there are actually 3. He said, "No, there are 4 cakes you brought me." I said, "But I appreciate your whatever you're saying about it, but you see that there were actually 3." No, he said, "There are 4." And then it occurred to me, there's something going on here. I told you I'm not that stupid. It takes me sometimes a little while. Meher Baba said that if you have real obedience to the master, and he says at night outside, and you see day, at a certain point you actually see night, if you reach that state. And I realized Muhammad the Master, though he wasn't Meher Baba directly, he was a 5th plane saint who was, to use the vernacular, channeling, although not in that cheap sense, but he was clearly a vehicle, a clear expression of Meher Baba's consciousness, more than probably just about anyone except maybe Mahara in the world. I mean, he had spent so much time with what he called Meher Baba Dada. So I knew that Meher Baba was, through him, to give me a spiritual lesson. Now, I realized I couldn't lie, because he could read my mind. And I knew that would be the most disrespectful thing to do to someone who's on the 5th plane in the mental world, to actually lie to them and think I'd get away with it. So I couldn't say, "Oh yeah, it's Muhammad, there were 3, and just patronize him. I knew that would be the worst thing. And I also knew that most likely I couldn't actually see 4 cakes there, as much as I would have liked to. But I asked myself, could I believe that there were actually 4 cakes there? Could I believe that my eyes and my whole scientific training in pre-med and everything, put that all aside and say, yes, if this great soul says there are 4 cakes there, he's right, and I'm wrong. They're not 3, even though I see 3, there are 4. Could I get myself to that place where I literally believed that there were 4 cakes there? Well, I knew that was the way to go. But I asked myself, it's not going to work unless I could really believe it, because Muhammad's going to know that I'm not doing it. I'm just going for the motions, and he's not going to like that at all. And sure enough, I realized that I could, and I did. I believed that there were 4 at that point, and I said, Muhammad, yes, you are right, there are 4. He lit up like a Christmas tree, absolutely brilliantly full of light and effulgence, and he said, Acha, now you never have to bring me a gift again as long as you live. He was so pleased with my willingness to go along with him. In reality, I was not patronizing. He knew I meant it. I believed there were 4. And that was major. It was a very important thing in my spiritual development to get to that, to be able to kind of intuit what I was supposed to do. It was a major lesson for me. And then I went up to the tomb again. And Meher Baba never said to me, what are you doing here? He only said that the first time. At this point, I was not suffering from jet lag, a little bit, but not much. I was refreshed. I had a reasonably good night's sleep. And again, he said to me, I am not buried in this tomb. You will never find me here. Do not waste your time hanging out in my tomb. I am in your heart and the hearts of all beings, human and other. That is the only place you'll ever recover me. You must spend your life digging me out from the substratum of the debris in your own heart and the hearts of others. Through love, through service, through relationship with others, you will find me. You will not find me with endless pilgrimages to the tomb. Even if you come 1,000,000 times, you will not discover me in this tomb. I am not here. I live in each and every being. The universe is my ashram, and I dwell in all, especially those who died to everything but me. And it was very, very, just as strong as the first time, but even clearer because I didn't have the, the anticipatory noise in my mind and the jet lag. So I came back the next day. Again, I am not buried in this tomb. Each time he changed it a little bit, but the same theme, and just weave different aspects of it. Through my entire trip in India, for a couple of months, every time I went to Samadhi, the only message I got from Mayor Baba is, I am not in this tomb. You will never find me here. Never. Do not waste your life looking for me in this tomb. I am not buried here. Well, I knew that this is what Mayor Baba was saying. I couldn't, give it over to jet lag at that point. But really, I didn't appreciate it. It took me at least 5 years to realize the incredible gift Mayor Baba had given me. I didn't really have even much of a clue. I was not mature enough, psychologically and spiritually, to realize it was a major, major important thing. Baba was showing me the way of the dharma of my sadhana, how I should approach. For me, I'm not saying this for everyone, but for me, Baba was showing me how he wanted me to find a greater relatedness to the formless God, which is the only real God anyway. And so it took me 5 years, and then I started realizing this is the most important gift that anyone has ever given me in my life. And then I very much appreciate it at this point in my life, certainly. And then Muhammad the Must found a way to provoke me to laughter. Clearly he knew I had an unusual laugh in those days, sometimes not lately much, but in those days I used to laugh fairly easily, and peals of laughter would fall out of me, sometimes for as much as 10 minutes, and usually it was so infectious that nearly everyone in the room would be on the floor laughing. I mean, to that extent. Not always, but could be. And Muhammad the Must apparently knew that was within me. So one day, he asked me, hair here, what is it? Not who is it. He said, what is it? Well, it wasn't insulting, but it was strange. And I started laughing. I started laughing. My peers are laughter. And Muhammad the Must started laughing, and tears started trickling down his cheeks. Streams of tears, and the more tears came down his cheeks, you could see the man was in great, great bliss. He loved it. And then he would provoke me to laugh even more. And this would go on sometimes for a long time. Bob Brown was there at the same time with his first Jane Brown. There were 2 Jane Browns in his life. His first wife. They were there, and Bob, of course, had his guitar, which Muhammad the Must called a twanga. So Bob played some music for Muhammad the Must, and then Muhammad the Must provoked me to laughter again. I don't know, he said some ridiculous comment that got me laughing again and again, and Muhammad's tears are streaming down his cheeks. Tears and tears and tears, and the man is in bliss. And I knew that to give such joy to a fifth plane Must can't be a bad thing by any means. I mean, he loved whatever it was that I was able to enable him to do. So Muhammad the Must said, twanga is good. The guitar is good, but laughter, he said, is much better. That's a direct quote from Muhammad the Must. And Bob Brown was a little taken aback. I could see it. But that's what Muhammad the Must, he said, guitar music is good, but laughter is much better. And this went on to such an extent. Whenever Muhammad the Must saw me and or he called for me, he would get me invariably to laugh. And that laughter would evoke tears of joy streaming down both cheeks, sometimes for 10 minutes. He just kept crying and crying and loving it. And look, the fact is, word of this got out to the Mandali. In those days, we were just a handful of people at the time. It wasn't like in the heyday of the pilgrimage when it could be, 100 Westerners at once. There was just a handful of us. And they found out that Muhammad the Must was paying me incredible attention. And they started putting it out, half seriously and half jocularly, that perhaps Muhammad Must was grooming me to be his chargeman, to take over as the next Must when he died. This was half serious and half joking. Exactly what the parameter of joking, I don't know. But it wasn't just a joke. They really, because Muhammad Must never, as far as they had never seen him, pay so much attention to an individual from the West or the East as did to me. Of course, I was very flattered by that. I didn't know if I wanted to become a Must, but it didn't sound like a bad gig. I mean, after all, no, I didn't know what I was doing in the West. To be a Must would be okay too. I could just hang out there. If Muhammad Must would make him his successor, I'd be okay about it. I mean, I didn't have anything, that much attachment to anything in the world to want to necessarily stay, you know, a salik or whatever the hell I was, or just gross conscious or whatever. Well, I knew already that I, from my early experience, that I was on the fourth plane and believed it, so I couldn't be just gross conscious, but I at that point I understood I was a salik. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't, not crazy, but I wasn't a Must. Anyway, this went on for a while, for a number of weeks. Then Muhammad Must calls me one day. No, he didn't call me. I came down to Lower Meherbad, where he used to hang out sometimes. And he said to me, sit over there. And he had me sit against the wall. Not against the wall, but out from the wall. And he sat about 10 feet, or 12 feet from me, no, 10 feet. And he sat on the chair. And he said to me, do not think and do not worry. But if thoughts come, if worries come, think of Dada, which was elder brother, Meher Baba. And that's it, and that'll be okay. Just think of Dada. Do not, you know, and so close your eyes. So I closed my eyes and I literally obeyed it. So he's giving me instructions like a Sadiq saint. Must generally don't do that. They don't give actual directions to help train disciples, but he's doing that. Not just now, but he's been doing this throughout my stay in India. He's guiding me spiritually, like he's my direct murshid, which apparently he was. Baba apparently okayed it for whatever reason. And so I'm sitting there for about 15 or 20 minutes. I think I told the story already, right? But anyway, I'm telling it again in context. And then suddenly in English, in a booming voice, maybe I was there 20 minutes, no more than half an hour, he says, God bless you. And that was very, very incredibly powerful. That's what I had told this before in a previous tape. But anyway, then I had all kind of contact with Padre, had a lot of fun with. But one of my greatest experiences was with Mehera. When I met Mehera, I was introduced to her. Of course, I couldn't touch her. Men were not allowed to touch her, let alone embrace her. And she looked at me in a way that no one else had ever looked at me. I mean, she penetrated into my interstices, just like people said about Meher Baba. He looked at them not in a judgmental way, but his gaze was able to penetrate into ages of antiquity, of people maybe when they were salamanders, God knows how far back. But you could feel that often. People described feeling that sense of antiquity of the gaze of Baba. And Mehera had a very similar thing. Of course, I had not got a chance to meet Meher Baba that way, but Mehera, I felt the same kind of phenomena. And she looked at me, and she got very happy. And she said, oh, you love Meher Baba. I can see that. And she said it in such a way that it was evident, that it was palpable to her. She could see that I had profound love for Meher Baba. Now, at that time, again, I was very, very self-deprecative. And I assumed, well, this is great. She's encouraging the Westerners. She says probably something like this to every fourth Baba lover. I can see that you love Meher Baba. This is probably her rap. I wasn't trying to put her down, but I was so into putting myself down. I was so sardonic and so nasty to myself that I assumed that no one could really see anything that good in me. No, I knew I loved Meher Baba, but I didn't know I had any special love for Meher Baba, that the purest soul in the universe, which Meher Baba said she was, would see in me something special. That was weird. Anyway, I'll tell you about that later. It took a couple of years for me to find out about that too. But then she asked me to sing for her. Now, I was not known as a musician. I was not carrying any instruments. However, I did feel at that time that if God had given me a choice of any gift I had wanted in this lifetime, it would have been to be a great singer. And apparently Mahara picked up on that. I know no other reason why she asked me to sing for her. Because I'd said nothing to her about singing or enjoying singing or anything. After she said, "Oh, you love Meher Baba, I can see that," the very next thing she said to me is, "Come to my porch and sing for me." I said, "Fine, Mahara." So I followed her to a porch. And there was, as it often were, a fairly large crowd of people. This was not a woman's tea, so it was co-ed. There were about 30 people on a porch, and more kept drifting in and so on. And I started singing one song after another. And in those days, it wasn't that I had a bad voice. I couldn't hold it. I couldn't stay in key to save my life. But I was very passionate about my singing, and I put all the feeling I could into it. And Mahara kept, I sang many, many, many songs. The concert went on for over an hour. Over an hour. I had sang her Eastern songs. I sang her all kind of Western songs. I sang her one about South Carolina. I'll sing a little bit of that to show you, an example of it. Anyway, I could see the people. I could see the melodrama, the drama they were going through. Is it more important to stay here and hear this horrible singing, or to move away from Mahara's presence? And I could see the agony people were in to some degree. And every once in a while, some people would peel away to get away from my singing, and then they'd come back because they missed Mahara's presence. And it was, but all I knew was that Mahara liked it and wanted me to go on, so I kept going on and on and on. It really was a long concert. And finally, to the great relief of all assembled, she said, "Okay, that's enough, Ira." And I stopped singing. She never asked me to sing again for her, but it was very, very significant to me that Mahara had me sing to her for over an hour on first meeting her. And here's a little bit of one of the songs I sang for her. My voice is not that great right now, but actually my voice has gotten significantly better since that concert. I don't know if Mahara's blessing was on it. I took a couple singing lessons, but now I can stay in key much of the time. Okay, this is an old folk song about South Carolina, and Mahara had been to South Carolina. I thought she'd enjoy it because she came in 1952 with Meher Baba and got into that terrible car accident and nearly killed her. In South Carolina grow many tall pines. I remember the oak tree that we used to climb. And now when I'm lonesome, I simply pretend I'm getting the feel of hickory wind. Oh, it's a hard way to find out that trouble is real in a faraway city with a faraway feel. But it makes me feel better each time I'm alone, calling me home, calling me home, Hickory Ridge. That was one of the really lovely songs I sang for her. But I sang her at least 40 or 50 songs, either in their entirety or whatever fragments of it I could remember. Fortunately, I had a pretty good repertoire. Anyway, so then years, just to go ahead, and then I'll go back to where I was. Years went by, and I started asking people like, what's his name, who's developed all that land there. The guy's been there forever.
Gary Clymer.
Not him, and also the other guy who's been there, he's still there, who developed all the real estate, all the houses, what's his name?
James Cox.
Yeah, James Cox. James Cox and I were fairly good friends. Not intimate friends, but friends. I said, James, you've been around Mahara countless hours. Have you ever heard her say, you love Meher Baba, I can see that, or something akin to that, to anyone? He said, no. First of all, let me tell you, Mahara was not a patronizer. She did not say anything unless she genuinely felt it in her heart. I have never heard anything that she said even remotely like that. That's a great great gift and honor at what she said to you. And I asked two other people of similar kind of, major time with Mahara. One of them said, well, maybe once I heard something similar. But basically, I discovered that was an extremely rare thing for Mahara to say that to anyone, Westerner or Easterner. And that became one of my second greatest gift in my life, because all the guff that I've had to put up with in my life, with Meher Baba people and just life in general, I'm able to manage it because I know Mahara thought extremely highly of me. And I don't care if the whole Baba world thinks I stink. It means more to me what Mahara thinks of me than what the whole rest of the Baba world think or believe. I don't care if they all think I'm insane. Mahara said I was great spiritually. That's all I need. So that was a very important gift that Mahara gave me. And I don't think she gave it to me just to compensate. She actually believed that about me. So if the purest soul of the universe believes that about me, maybe you people ought to reevaluate your opinion of Ira Shader. Anyway, that's up to you. And anyway, then going back to India, I was grief-stricken because in spite of all this great interaction I was having with Muhammad Damas and my fine connection with Mahara, and I got along with the other monks perfectly well, with Adi and others, and Erich, and I wasn't very close to the two. I was closest to on that trip was Muhammad Damas and Mahara. I didn't have that much connection with the others, but there was nothing I didn't enjoy about them. I spent time discussing things with Adi, which I've talked about in previous tapes, and Mani too, but and Mahara a lot. But I realized that Baba was dead. Not spiritually dead, but when Baba had died and I was already a follower, I figured that's okay. I'm not going to meet him this life, but he's infinite, he's formless, it doesn't matter how much. When I was in India, I realized I really need the physical presence of Meher Baba. I felt that way, somehow or another, karmically. I was so twisted somehow, I felt. Whether it's true or not, this is how I felt. I believed that Meher Baba could guide me directly, because I knew that he said he could. But I felt I needed the touch of a living master. Now, and so I was getting more and more unhappy. Most of the pilgrims were gleeful. We had Mahara's birthday, it was near Christmas, and they were dancing off the walls. And I was getting more and more depressed. The disparity between how happy they were. They would ride in the buses singing songs of love for Meher Baba, and I'd be feeling, my God, is it time to commit suicide? I mean, I was just really out of it, very, very unhappy. And I couldn't stand it anymore. I was really miserable. I felt I had to get away because I couldn't handle the comparison between my experience, which was miserable, unmitigated miserability, and basically the happiness of the other people who were there for the same reason. So I met this woman from Hyderabad, a Hindu woman, a married woman. She was married to a scientist, a physicist from Hyderabad. She was living in a Russian compound. I am sure that they were working on the atomic bomb. It was all top secret, she told me. He wasn't even allowed to tell her what they're working on. But this was 6 months before the first atomic bomb was exploded in India. Clearly, it was with the help of the Russians, the Soviets. And where it was happening, I don't know where they actually constructed the bomb, but the research went on in Hyderabad, that much I know. And so she said that she had a must in her garage. Now, why the hell I needed her must when I had Muhammad, who was perfectly fine must, and most likely higher than any must she had in her garage, I'll never know, except I wanted to get away from there. She invited me to come and meet her must in the garage. It's so bizarre. And I went to see Alaba. He used to cast, the Hafiz falls. And I said, should I leave and go with this woman to see her must in Hyderabad? And he did falls, if any of you have experienced it. He was tremendously animated and all. He said, no, it says here, Hafiz says, do not go. Stay here. in Mehrabad, with Mehrabad. Do not go to Hyderabad. Of course, I went. I was so desperate to get out of there, even though perhaps I was disobeying the great Hafiz as well as Mayor Baba. I left on the midnight train to nowhere. It felt like that. And I went with this woman who, although she was Hindu, she wore a veil. Although every once in a while she'd peek out the veil at me. Very strange woman. But I didn't sense that she'd be any harm to me. And I trusted that what she was telling me was real. And we went through this, seemed like endless journey, second-class Indian train from Mayor Baba's place to Hyderabad. It seemed like it was to the end of the world. The journey went on for a day and a half, and I was fit to be tied, and cursing myself for being such a disobedient fool, and going to Hyderabad for no reason. What I need to see a must in the garage for. But there I was. It was too late to turn back. Maybe I could have turned back, but I didn't have the motive power to do so. And we get there, sure enough. She got this must-like character living in her garage. And he had long, tapered fingers and fingernails. The story was he was a scion of the royal house of Hyderabad. And he was apparently one of those people who was born a must. And then he drifted away, wandering around, as musts tend to do. And of course, some people revered him and fed him. He was a young man, quite lovely. And he used to make chapatis, very spicy, and feed them to whoever came along. And she took him in and kept him as her own pet must. I'll tell you, it may be better than a pet poodle, I don't know. And then her husband worked, I met her husband. She had 2 kids, I think, yes. Husband worked right there in the secret compound. You couldn't get into that compound unless you knew someone, you had a pass. No one was allowed in, and no one was allowed out. It was top secret. I stayed there for about 3 weeks, and we would go to movies, and we'd go to the Hyderabad Botanic Gardens. Any of you ever been there? It's exquisite. One of the best botanic gardens in the country of India. And we went to all the places associated with Mayor Baba. She took me to see his cave, where he did the seclusion work right around the time I was born. Right around the time I was born, Mayor Baba was in Hyderabad doing the seclusion work. And not the cave that Elizabeth stayed in. There was more than one cave in the area. There's that cave, and then there's this other cave where Baba was doing special, like month-long seclusion. Right at the end of that seclusion, I was born. Maybe it was important for me to be in Hyderabad because Baba, I don't know why I was in Hyderabad. But then she took me to see the cave where Elizabeth had spent the night in. It's not a natural cave, it's a man-made cave. And it's not very deep. And it has as you can see from the pictures with Elizabeth, it has a metal fence on it. But she got the guy who had the key to open up the gate, and the guy offered me to spend the night in there just like Elizabeth had, but I have to be locked in. And I tend to be claustrophobic. And I saw myself, in my negative imagination, waking up at 3 a.m., banging at the gate, screaming bloody hell because I needed to get out of there because I felt claustrophobic. And I didn't want to risk it. But I could have spent the whole night in the cave. It's a rare opportunity. I don't know how many people offer that, but I refused it. Because I have certain phobias. One of them is deep-seated claustrophobia. Particularly when it comes to hot places. I've been to sweat lodges where I couldn't even stay unless they opened up the curtain a little bit because I was freaking out. I got so panicked I was going to rush out like a horse from a fire. Something must have happened, but I got burned to death in one lifetime in a hot, confined place, and it still terrifies me. So anyway, this was not a hot place, but I was too frightened to stay there. But I got to see some wonderful things. And then finally, I don't know what happened, but the woman, my host, was very good to host me, but she got tired of me. I don't know why. Maybe after a while I'm tiresome. I didn't know what she wanted from me. I don't know. But eventually she called, and in fact, also, at that point, Hyderabad and the neighboring town of Secunderabad were basically one center. there was the Hyderabad Secunderabad Meher Baba Center, and they had it's nothing today that it's grown tremendously. That whole area is like the Silicon Valley, along with that other place? It used to be anyway in Andhra. Those were the leading. In fact, the only place in India today or in the world that Meher Baba's following is growing by leaps and bounds is in Andhra State. Nearly every Indian Baba lover who comes to the center, if you ask them where they're from, 85% of them are from Andhra State, from Hyderabad, Secunderabad, or something like that. So, but at that time, there wasn't such a tremendous following, but sizable. They asked me to speak at the Hyderabad Secunderabad meeting, and I spoke to them in English in front of about 150, 200 people. And they were very, very appreciative of what I had to share with them. In fact, a number of people came over who had met Meher Baba and said, "You understand Meher Baba more than we do." They weren't just saying that to patronize me, they felt it. So, but I've rarely gotten a chance to speak to Meher Baba groups. Once I get the chance to speak to the LA Meher Baba group, they invited me to give a presentation before they had the new meeting, the new meeting place they have now, or many years ago. And once or twice I got to speak to the New York Meher Baba group. They invited me. I gave a talk on Meher Baba and economics, a very interesting subject which is rarely ever spoken about, but a very important subject I'm not going to talk about now, but I spoke about Meher Baba's approach to economics based upon his spirituality. And anyway, I had a very good time there. But then she took me to meet the president. I'd met him before. The president of the Meher Baba group of Hyderabad Secunderabad. Lovely man. And he said, "Okay, why don't we put you on a plane and get you back to Meherabad?" I said, "Listen," I said, "I don't want to go." And I felt like the Brer Rabbit. Remember who says, "Please, don't throw me in the tar pit." What was it? Do anything you want to me," because he wanted to go there. And I felt like, look, I'd rather be cut to pieces almost. I mean, it's a bit extreme, but I felt I'd rather be skinned alive than go back to the Meher Baba Center at that point. I didn't want to go. So I had a friend in New Delhi, a friend of a friend, and I said, "No, I want to go on a plane to New Delhi." They said, "Why are you going to New Delhi? Meher Baba's your everything. You don't need to go to New Delhi." I said, No, I need to visit someone, which I didn't have to visit him, but I didn't want to go back. So they finally agreed after a certain amount of haggling to get me on a plane because I paid my way, and I went to New Delhi. And I got to meet a friend of a friend. He was a relatively poor man, lived in an apartment with his father, elderly father, and they were also very kind to me. They fed me a lot of fish and good food, and I stayed there for a while. And then I started wandering because I had the idea maybe I could find a living saint. I didn't think I could find a perfect master for some reason. I just didn't think that was just shooting too high. But I thought maybe I could find a fifth or sixth plane saint, someone like Neem Karoli Baba, who had just died the previous year, the one that Ramdas is so involved with. My Meher Baba said he was a great saint, a real saint, and he had just passed on. I would have gone to meet him if he was still in the body. And the first day out, I'm walking New Delhi, just wandering around. I'm walking about 10 blocks, and I walked directly into a tomb shrine. And if I kept walking, and if there had been a gate there, I would have walked right into the tomb. The tomb wasn't open. But in other words, I didn't know where I was going, particularly, and it turned out to be the tomb of Hazrat Inayat Khan, the great Sufi master, who has been a great, great influence in my life. I didn't even know he was buried in New Delhi. And as I said, I didn't have him in a tour book. And looking for him, he found me. And I knew that was very significant. I mean, I would have banged my head right into the tomb, but there was a gate around it, so I couldn't do that. So I paid my respect to Hazrat Inayat Khan. Clearly he wanted me there for whatever reason it was. And then I continued to look around different places, Buddhist centers. I met a German couple, Buddhist, Sufi, this, that. There was quite a lot of activity at that time. There was still, this was, the early 70s still. And there were still many hippie types and people who had been influenced by Be Here Now who were out searching throughout India for spiritual guides for true saints and merchants and other kind of Neem Karoli Baba types. There were hundreds of us out there. And I met this German couple, a very lovely married German couple, who've been searching in India on and off for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And we are planning to write a guidebook about who they had found. They had counted many spiritual beings that were not well known at all in the West, but they thought they were worth informing the public about. They told me they had met a man up at the foothills of the Himalayas, not far from New Delhi, just a day's trip, a few hours trip, who at the very least was extremely psychic. And they felt most likely he was similar to Neem Karoli Baba, because every time they came to visit him, and they came to visit him about 7 or 8 times already, he had out the amount of tea cups that were needed for the amount of people who they were with. If they were with 7 people, he had 7 cups of tea waiting for them. If there were just 3 people, he had 3 cups of tea. Now, maybe he had a spy up the road checking out, but it's unlikely. They said they felt he was, at the very least, extremely psychic and most likely a true saint. Would I like to come meet him? Well, they said, as far as they could feel, he was very similar to Neem Karoli Baba. Well, that was my ticket. That was just the kind of thing I was looking for. So I said yes. The next day they were leaving. I was going to meet them in the morning, and I was going to meet this Neem Karoli Baba type guy. That night, I was in utter racked with consternation. I felt I was about, like a husband or a wife, not to be sexist about it, about to have an affair with another person the very next day. That I was being unfaithful to Meher Baba by meeting this saint. Or maybe not a saint, but let's say he was a saint. And what should I do? And I couldn't sleep at all. I was up the entire night, racked in tremendous confusion, consternation, and despair. And I could see nothing. In the beginning of the night, I had the thought, maybe I could not do this because, Baba said, to Dreyfus, Rick Dreyfus, and others, you'll not find me in caves or seeking out saints. Go back to America. You've had my contact, and I will guide you from here on. You don't need anything further. And I had that idea. I thought, no, that's just rationalization. I'm just being a coward again. That's what I imagine Meher Baba would say. That's not necessarily what he wants from me. Maybe it is, but let me see. So I kept probing deeper and deeper. And the more I looked inside myself, the more blackness I saw. I saw everything was just a pole of blackness. I was in such despair. One minute I'd say, yes, I'm going to meet this man, and then 20 minutes later say, no, I can't do it, I'm not going. And this went on back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I was fit to be tied, whatever the hell that means. Well, I guess that's whatever, not to get into that term. And toward the dawn, about 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 maybe, I'm again looking within myself, and I see a glimmer of light. I mean, everything was deep black, but there was something that was a little dark purple, a glimmer of light. So I'm looking to see inwardly, what is that? And I realized that's attached to this inner call, go back to America. Because even if you stay here with a true saint and become one yourself, there are already enough real saints in India, in the East. If you go back to America and live a genuinely spiritual life, you'll be a much greater service to God than if you stay here in India and even become a true saint. Go back to America. Well, I didn't know if that was my rationalization or my imagination, but I saw there was a little bit of light attached to it, and everything else was pure nothing, darkness. So I decided, okay, I'm going with that. That's coming from Meher Baba. I decided I'm going to go with that, because that's what I decided. Come the morning, I went to the consular office, changed my visa, and changed my ticket to leave. I took it as a direct order. I don't know necessarily that's how Baba meant it, but that's how it struck me. Go back to America meant immediately. Don't even stay in Delhi. Don't just not meet this saint the next morning, but quit India now. Get back to America. That's how I took it. So I made preparations and left that very next day. I got my flight changed and did whatever had to be done. And as I walked up the tarmac, or from the tarmac, up to the airplane, I don't know what that staircase is called, if there's a particular name for it, but as I put my feet on it, I had an internal vision, very, very, very clear, like watching a movie. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Mayor Baba said that the first large group to come that will pick up on his manifestation publicly will be the Muslims. He said, when they get a whiff, that's exactly how he expressed it. He said, when the Muslims get a whiff, W-I-F-F, of what's at my tomb, they will not bother to get passports. They will come by the hundreds and the thousands overland into northern India and run, whole families run to my tomb. When you see that, Mayor Baba said, know for sure, my manifestation is happening. That is the time of the breaking of my silence, when you witness that. Now, some people have said, well, all those Iranian students we had at the tomb a few years ago, that was not what Baba was talking about. He wasn't talking about a few. Many of those people were freeloading because the Rajneesh ashram wanted to pay money to stay, and the Baba group didn't ask for that. So many of those people weren't even sincere seekers of Baba. Few of them were. But no, Baba talked about a massive migration of people. Anyway, the vision I had was of just that. I saw hundreds and thousands of families with camels and horses running with tears streaming down their cheeks in a way that's hard to imagine, with a kind of semi-madness, running to Baba's tomb. Some of the relatives dying along the way, and they put them in shallow graves, and they kept running to Baba. And it was so glorious. I myself was crying. And I knew I was witnessing what I will see one day, which has not yet happened. And as soon as my feet were on the airplane, the vision vanished. But I knew Baba had given that to me because he was pleased with my willingness to obey him and to give up my aspirations of serving a saint and perhaps even becoming one in India, to give it up and obey him. And so he gave me that gift of a prophetic vision of what will soon happen, I believe. And when I was in the airplane, going back to the West, I didn't feel like I was going back to my life in America. I felt like some yogi who had snuck into a physical Western body and was going there somehow conveniently with an American passport. I honestly felt that way for the whole trip. I didn't feel I was going back to resume my life. I felt I was going to start a new life. And I'm going to end it here until the next tape. This was an amazing journey back. I'll say one more thing and then I'll stop. On the way back, I met a lovely French woman who was coming from Oroville. She had been there and she was a seeker, and I talked about Mayor Baba, she talked about Shura Bindo, who I'm also very interested in, and she invited me to stay at her place in the left bank of Paris. I had no need to get back right away. My life was so mixed up anyway. And who knows, we might have had a romance, we might have had a love affair. I don't know what I might have stayed in Paris. I love French and French culture. I might have had a whole other life, but I felt I was, I don't know why I didn't do it. I think I was too immature, too insecure, but I didn't get off the plane in Paris. It was like they made a movie, something like that, about a train where two young people meet and then they have a love affair. But anyway, that was my chance at a Parisian love affair, and I passed it up for better or for worse, and the rest I'll talk about another time.